The girl at first glance is just a girl, frail and insignificant to the greater scheme of things, but looks can be deceiving. Let's explore how one little girl upended all of human history and paved the way for a new, cruel age. The girl's story begins in darkness. She carried the heavy burden of bearing a unique and ancient soul. As far back as she could remember, she had been alone in the dark, trapped in the cruelest place in all the Western world, the pitch-black dungeon of fear and hunger. There she would struggle to scavenge anything she could to survive, just barely subsisting on spoiled food and dirty water. Then, one unfortunate day, she was captured by a guard and thrown in a tiny, cramped cage. There she would be starved and tormented with no hope of escape. Then, to make matters worse, part of the poorly maintained fortress collapsed, all but sealing her fate. Even if she managed to escape the cage somehow, there would be nowhere to go. But then something unexpected happened. On a whim, a lone mercenary cleared the rubble. He had been searching for a certain man, but instead found a scared, dying little girl. He would free her, feed her, and protect her. She had never known such kindness. The thought of kindness itself was a strange and foreign concept. She had only ever experienced fear and hunger. Together they would delve deeper into the darkness to search for the man the mercenary had come there for. The girl is something of a blank slate, and a MacGuffin at first glance. Placing her at the heart of darkness is essential for advancing the plot, or rather, the greater scheme of things. But I would argue she fits better into the heroic chosen one archetype than a MacGuffin, albeit with a dark twist. She's of divine lineage. She appears ordinary, but she's actually something of a demigod. She is rescued by a mentor and father figure, and then follows him deeper into the dungeons. She finds a powerful magic book and meets a new ally. They find the man her mentor was looking for, but it's too late. Instead of leaving empty-handed, they brave the dangers of the ancient city of the gods and find treasure. Satisfied with what they found, she and her mentor try to escape the dungeon and return to his home, but they become hopelessly lost and trapped in the bottom of the dungeon. There she kills and supplants the old god of the dungeon. She resists her transformation, but ultimately ascends to godhood. Then she uses her vast new power to advance mankind out of the Dark Ages, by using suffering as motivation to force growth and change. The girl has a timid personality, and she almost never speaks due to her life in the terrifying dungeon, but she can be very caring and affectionate, as seen when she gently pets the doll's hair and Moonless. In-game, she has a built-in mechanic that lets her sacrifice herself, by trying to shield the main character from potentially deadly attacks. The girl, while not technically human, understands the human condition, unlike the gods of old. She appears to be around 10 years old, but she may actually be much younger. The girl only knew fear and hunger, so Nilvan would need to have abandoned her to the horror of the dungeon early in life, or she would have known a mother's love. It is extremely unlikely she survived for nearly 10 years in the dungeons or Mahabra. Nilvan is not the only new god who had children. Vatiel had many. His offspring had an interesting trait. They rapidly aged and developed. The girl may be similar in that regard, allowing her to speedrun the human condition in the cruelty of the dungeons, and influencing the type of god she would become in the end. But we cannot overlook the personality of the god of fear and hunger when discussing the girl's character. Fear and hunger is a complex and nuanced god. She embodies many concepts, which are derived from 3 major influences: the girl's fear and hunger, the god of the depths, and Kahara's kindness. She is a god not only of fear and hunger, but of suffering in general. In addition, she is also a god of progress, ambition, and like her predecessor, a god of darkness, of outcasts, of small weak forgotten creatures, and vermin. She is also a god of humanity, and cares deeply for humans in her own twisted way. She wants what she thinks is best for mankind, and to that end, any means, no matter how cruel, is justified. As far as I know, Miro has not mentioned any specific inspirations for the girl. I did not particularly reference any outside media in my interpretation of the character either. Her alter ego, on the other hand, is a different story. The god of fear and hunger has a very rich and complex design in all of its 5 forms. The first stage, the beginning of the girl's painful transformation, symbolizes growing pains, the end of childhood, and the fear of change. The second stage is heavily inspired by the Venus de Milo. This form represents womanhood and beauty. But there is more to it. She is completely enveloped in the darkness, mirroring the final words the god spoke to Kahara. There is beauty in this darkness. She is also shedding tears of blood and wearing a crown of thorns, making her a messianic figure and martyr. There are spikes breaking through her outer shell, like a chick hatching from an egg, leading to the third stage. Here, her outer shell has been cast off, and her womb is torn wide open, symbolizing motherhood and the pain of giving birth. The messianic features carry over, but now there's an agonizing expression on her face as her body is rapidly growing and at the same time tearing itself in half. You can see she has regrown new arms that are further dividing into new appendages, leading into the 4th stage. Now she has become a massive, towering, caterpillar-like creature, representing metamorphosis. She carries over the messianic features again, but this time the expression on her face is one of ecstasy rather than agony. This blurring of pleasure and pain is a clear reference to the Hellraiser franchise. The motherhood symbolism is still present. We can see her giving birth to her own final form. The 5th and final stage is a clear reference to Silent Hill 3's gluttony. But there's a lot more going on here than just that. Her old skin has been completely shed and is lying on the ground, showing that she has left her humanity completely behind. She has become a faceless idol, giving her a more universal appeal, making her easier to identify with for both men and women. She has a halo, denoting her divine nature, and fleshy robe-like outgrowths. These robes are like a dark reflection of priestly garments, as she intends to guide humanity. Her overall shape is cross-like, another messianic reference, but there's still more. She has become something akin to a scarecrow. What better representation of fear and hunger could you imagine than a scarecrow after all? Her predecessor, the god of the depths, was an all-consuming darkness that was heralded by the crow mauler, fitting that its replacement frightens crows to save crops to prevent hunger. In my own interpretation of the god of fear and hunger's nature, I drew specifically from Berserk. Not a stretch considering how much Berserk is in the game's DNA. Berserk Chapter 83 was removed from the manga by its author Kentarou Miura. He felt it gave away too much too soon and was better left apocryphal. But in that chapter we are introduced to the idea of evil, a dark primordial god that was birthed by mankind's suffering and negative emotions. It could influence humanity and guide history as it saw fit. The old gods of the Fear and Hunger universe are a primordial embodiment of concepts such as destruction and creation. They exist outside of time and are completely unrestrained by it. The god of fear and hunger is a god on par with them, the pure, timeless concepts of fear and hunger. By its very nature, the god of fear and hunger has always existed, independent of the girl. It is a being of such immense power that it could influence and guide human history, just like the idea of evil. And just as the idea of evil manipulated humans to create a lineage that would give rise to Griffith, fear and hunger did the same to create the girl, the perfect vessel for its own birth. Upon meeting her, the girl did not see Darcy as a threat, but never had the same level of affection for her as she did Kahara. Darcy cared about the girl, but she was never a priority for her. She left Kahara and the girl and never looked back, nor gave them a second thought, which may have caused the girl to resent Darcy on a subconscious level. Anki could tell that there was more to the girl. To his trained eye, she radiated a unique and powerful aura. He had stared at her with wonder during the brief couple hours that they knew each other, which combined with his appearance made her uncomfortable. Regenwalder pitied the girl. As a father, he shuddered to think what she must have experienced within the blood-soaked dungeon walls. She was one of the primary reasons he decided not to seek revenge against Darcy, fearing it would grieve the girl. The girl could see Regenwalder's soft expression when he looked at her, but she was still indifferent to him. The girl and Moonless became fast friends, while Kahara and the others navigated Nilvan's dream world. Neither one wanted to be separated, but the girl was much more attached to Kahara. Likewise, Moonless was more attached to Regenwalder. The girl had only the vaguest memories of her mother, mostly just a lingering feeling of abandonment, feelings that she may have tapped into a little when Darcy went her own way. To Nilvan, the girl was a means to an end. She didn't love her, not really. She was just a way to vicariously extend her influence beyond her time. She may have felt just a little guilty about what she had done to her own daughter, but not enough to set aside her ambitions. Nilvan considered herself the grand architect who penned the plans that set man free from the old gods, but she was Fear and Hunger's puppet all along. Much like her mother, the girl had virtually no memories of her father, but despite that, she was overcome with sadness upon seeing his gutted corpse in the catacombs, although she herself didn't know why. Nothing within the dungeon frightened the girl as much as the pocket cat. Although she didn't understand what the terrible aura the pocket cat gave off was, she could feel the weight of the old god the pocket cat served. She instinctively knew that if he got a hold of her, she would suffer worse than anything she had experienced before, which is saying quite a lot. Given the nature of what a god like Fear and Hunger is, the girl always was, and always will be a part of Fear and Hunger. Even before Fear and Hunger stepped out of eternity and manifested in the world physically, the girl was destined to ascend in the heart of darkness. She was always Fear and Hunger. But her short existence as a mortal girl marked the divide between when she merely influenced history and when she took its reins. Kahara was just a flawed human man. He was nothing particularly special, but to the girl he was the only person to show her kindness, the only one who ever provided for her, and the only one who would give his life to protect her. He was her real father, but more than that, he was the only thing that stood between a cold, dispassionate, dark god of suffering and the rest of humanity. Without him, the god of Fear and Hunger would not be a god that cared for mankind. She would just be another old god. And just like the other old gods, she would have been utterly indifferent to mankind at best, and hostile at worst. To that small part of the god of Fear and Hunger that was the girl, Kahara was the only reason she needed to care for humanity, even if it was in her own twisted way. For just a brief moment, the small part of the god of Fear and Hunger that was the little girl wept for the man she had come to love as a father, while he took his very last breath. Understanding the role the girl plays in the greater scheme of things is to understand Fear and Hunger itself. She is Fear and Hunger after all. She broke the cycle. Before her, history was doomed to repeat itself for all time. After her, mankind could finally escape the Dark Ages. What followed was the renaissance of society and the rapid development of technology. It was a cruel age, but it rivaled if not surpassed the golden age of antiquity, bringing us all to Termina.